When AEW first announced that MJF would be wrestling Will Ospreay on Dynamite and not waiting until Wembley Stadium, I thought they were nuts. I thought they were nuts to give that match away for the first time in front of 2,500 people when you could have had up to 50,000 in London going crazy for it. Shout out to the fans in Little Rock. They were loud for that match on Wednesday, but I still thought they were nuts. Still do. But that doesn't change the fact that the two of them had an outstanding match, one of the very best of the entire year in any promotion, and one of the very best, and maybe the best, certainly up there, in Dynamite history. And Dynamite has had 5 years of some fantastic matches, so that is high praise. They went 60 minutes, or 59 minutes, 58 seconds to be exact. In the 5 years that this company has been in existence, there have been a handful of time limit draws. A 20-minute one with Cody Rhodes and Darby Allin at the first Fyter Fest. The 30-minute one at the first Arthur Ashe show with Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson. Danielson and Hangman Page. They went 60 minutes once. Danielson and MJF went 60 minutes once, and then some, in their Iron Man match, the greatest Iron Man match I've ever seen. MJF nearly went the distance again, but for 2 seconds to spare at the very end of a long match that never felt overly long to me. I know it did for some people. That was one of the criticisms I saw, but not for me. If they were having a boring match that dragged, yeah, I would have noticed the clock a lot more. But they were going nonstop for 60 minutes, trading big moves. Neither man would be able to put the other one away. Ospreay selling an arm injury, maybe not very well as the match went on, but he sold an arm injury. And then later on, after MJF spat in his face, he nearly snapped and dropped him on his head with the Tiger Driver 91. But he stopped himself. He got him upside down for it, but he could not go through with the move. This is a small story that they have been telling since Dynasty, when he dropped Bryan Danielson on his head and his neck, and he sold it like he was dying. He has refused to use the move ever since. Swerve Strickland told him in the lead up to Forbidden Door, you don't have the killer instinct that it takes to be the AEW World Champion. And he was proven right in that match. Swerve was proven right again on Wednesday when Ospreay refused to use the move. MJF didn't hesitate. He blasted him with the Dynamite Diamond Ring, which is a tired finish for many of his matches, but at least he's consistent. He's been using that ring to win matches for almost 4 years now. When Ospreay eventually hits that move, if he doesn't win with it, or hit it and then immediately win with a hidden blade right after it, if the fucker he is in the ring with kicks out, I'm going to be pissed, okay? He has got to win with that move, and it'll get a big reaction. I would like to think that this now sets up the rematch for All In, because that's where it should happen. And the way that they did that finish, it took some balls to do that finish, by the way, and I actually thought it was clever. Because everybody just assumed that they were going to go the distance, the later it got. And then with 2 seconds to spare, they actually gave us a finish. But there has to be a rematch. MJF winning the international title, it throws a monkey wrench into things otherwise, because what do you do with Will Ospreay at Wembley? I was thinking that we were going to get a time limit draw, and then he won. I thought that would be their way of protecting both men from taking a loss and giving them a reason to run it back. But then he won. Now, Pac is in line next for a shot at the international title. They could do it at Wembley. But MJF against Pac, that doesn't scream Wembley to me. And where does that leave Ospreay? Daniel Garcia, where's he in all this, right? He's obviously going to be fighting MJF when he gets back. Is he going to be back in time for Wembley? Or do they save that match and save his return for All Out? MJF is going to be defending the international title at Arena Mexico in CMLL next week. After that, they could do MJF against Pac as a TV match for Dynamite and then send MJF to All In to defend against Ospreay. I mean, it's not like they haven't done this before. They did the first MJF CM Punk match on Dynamite in Chicago. MJF won that match, and then he lost the dog collar match to Punk a month later at Revolution. Garcia is the wild card here. If the plan is for MJF to drop the title to him and to put him over and try to make a new star, then I don't know where that leaves Will Ospreay. Obviously, he'll be on the show. I just don't know exactly what they'll have him doing. Of course, the fallback is there's always Ricochet, who I'm sure is going to be coming in soon. But why did Tony Khan put this match on TV? Why did he do Swerve Strickland against Okada on the same night? Other than the fact that it was the 250th episode of Dynamite. Because he is still trying to close the biggest deal in AEW's existence. He is trying to close the most important deal in AEW history. BJ Bethel, he's a writer for SEScoops.com. He tweeted on Friday, sources say AEW has an agreement in principle with Warner Brothers Discovery for a new TV deal. Their exclusive negotiation window is set to expire this coming weekend. No word on when it will be official. Now, right now, he is the only one saying this. It is an unconfirmed report. Otherwise, nobody else has said a word. But that's why we got MJF against Will Ospreay on Wednesday night, which now leads into Blood and Guts this week. That's why Tony has been loading up these shows, because he is trying to make a great impression with his bosses. And I know it sounds weird. Well, how could a billionaire have a boss? But make no mistake, they are his bosses. If they tell him to jump, he asks them, Mr. David Zaslav, how high would you like me to jump, sir? If the head honcho at TBS or TNT wants him to do something or wants him to promote something for them, he's going to do it. He wanted to pop a number, and he did. It still wasn't 800,000. I told you it wouldn't be. I told you that last week. I had people saying, oh, they're going to easily clear 800. Maybe they'll hit 900 for the first time in I don't even know how long. I said, look, the number should definitely be up, but they ain't hitting 800. And I was almost wrong, but not quite. They came close. 795,000 overnight viewers on TBS. That was up 15% from the week before. That is their best audience total since they aired the Brawl-In footage with CM Punk and Jack Perry. Key Demo was up 17% from the week prior, their best number since June 5th. I was curious to see the quarter hours, to see if they were able to hold their audience with that hour-long match, and they did. They mostly held steady. They dropped off from the opening quarter, of course. All the Sheldon Cooper fans tuning out when Big Bang Theory ended, from 871,000 down to 829,000. But then they went up to 834, and they ended the hour at 841,000 at the 9 p.m. hour. After that second hour, it was a steep decline until the show ended with 685,000 for the end of the Swerve and Okada match. So it worked. Their experiment worked, and they held the audience. They held the audience because it was a great fucking match. It was an exciting match that held people's attention. If it was a boring match, then people would have tuned out in droves. But it's not the kind of match you can do every week. Every now and then, with the right people, under the right circumstances, it can work. And by the way, I should mention this here. I'll get back to them in a second, but I should mention this here. There was a story this week that Warner Brothers Discovery is not done yet with the NBA. I'm not finished with you. They're making one last-ditch effort to try to keep them with their C-level package, because the NBA has an A package and a B package, and then there's a C package. And they're planning to match the $1.8 billion Amazon package. I believe it's the Amazon one. The NBA sent them the terms to match, because they have the right to match. And they have until tomorrow to match it, which will probably end up in court if they do, because the NBA could argue that, Max doesn't have the kind of distribution and the kind of reach that Amazon has, and so therefore it's not a true match. That's for the lawyers to sort out. The point is, if they spend $1.8 billion on a media rights package to keep some of the NBA games, that could have an effect on any possible media rights deal with AEW. Doesn't mean that there won't be one, but in terms of the numbers and the terms, or the timing of when we get the announcement, since this is all going on right now, it could have an impact on that. And until a deal is actually announced, anything is possible. Remember, Warner Brothers Discovery still has billions of dollars in debt and just laid off another 1,000 employees. The good rating they got on Wednesday, though, it came at just the right time for Tony Khan. Now, the other thing also is people suddenly realized this week that AEW content is now appearing on their Max streaming service. The only thing is, it's on the French version of Max, and that content has been available there since June 11th. And what is today? As I am recording this, it is July 21st. I don't know why it took this long for people to realize this, It is not available on Max in the US, just so you know. This is not news. Nor do I think that this is any indication of where this deal is going or not going. So it was all much ado about nothing. They're not on Max. One has nothing to do with the other. I hope they end up on Max. I hope they land on Max when they announce their new deal. I hope there's a streaming component to it. I hope all the pay-per-views go there. But this was a non-news story. But back to MJF and Will Ospreay. You would think that wrestling fans who liked the match would be able to give the two of them their flowers for having a great match without being attacked for it or without being mocked for it. You would think, even if you did not personally care for the match, that people would be able to appreciate getting an hour-long wrestling match of that caliber on TV, and that it would not degenerate into a civil war online. But then you would not understand the state of wrestling discourse on social media in 2024. It is a complete shit show, and it makes me embarrassed to be a fan. Wrestling fans often make me embarrassed to be a fan. Tribalists on either side make me embarrassed to be a fan. It's one thing to say, oh, I thought the match was too long. I was bored by it. I wish they would have sold some of the big moves more. Why did the referee not count them out when they were in the crowd for so long, right? Which you could say about any main event match that ends up in the crowd. I mean, that's a valid question. I've seen Steve Austin and The Rock brawl into the crowd and wondered the same thing. Or, man, that match would have been perfect if it was just 25 minutes shorter, right? Those are all perfectly valid criticisms. I do find it funny. Some of the people who criticize the match for MJF playing to the crowd too much or powdering out to the floor and stalling, like that hasn't been pro wrestling heel 101 psychology for decades. Like, if that bothered you, then do yourself a favor. Don't watch any Ric Flair matches from the 80s, okay? Just do yourself that favor and stay away from those, because you're not going to like it. But where it gets embarrassing is when people just shit on the match for being flippy, or some saying that MJF doesn't know how to work, or Will Ospreay doesn't know how to work. All he does is flip and no sell, right? That just tells me that you either A, don't actually watch the product and you're not arguing in good faith, or B, you just are not a very bright person. And there are a lot of those in the wrestling community. Case in point, Cagematch.net. I don't know if you heard about this. Cagematch, it's a nifty little resource if you want to look up information on individual wrestlers or past events. It's got a great database there. There's some good information in there. I try not to pay attention to the match ratings and the reviews because they don't really matter to me. But to illustrate just how bad the tribalism has gotten, and I will say, Tony Khan bears some of the responsibility and the blame for this, for citing Cagematch that one time as some sort of barometer for how good his show was, which was ridiculous. But as soon as he did that, it's like blood in the water, right? As soon as he said that, I could just imagine the look on Matt Mack's face. Matt Mack, by the way, he runs the website. I could imagine the look on his face when he heard Tony Khan bring up Cagematch for the first time. Like, you would think, oh, that's cool, he brought up my website. But yeah, I could just imagine him going, oh no, why would you do that? But Matt Mack was forced to institute a new rule back in January for their rating system, which is there are to be no mentions of AEW or Tony Khan or similar topics in the comments about anything WWE related. And likewise, there are to be no mentions of WWE, Triple H, Vince McMahon, or anything similar in the comments about anything related to AEW. Because that's what people started doing in the comments. Like in their reviews, or like under a WWE match, they would talk about how, AEW was so much better, and they did this better, or they did that better. Or they would say, AEW sucks, Tony Khan sucks, he wishes he could put on a match this great, blah, blah, blah. It is the lowest form of discourse in the wrestling community. And it's sad that he even had to create that rule in the first place, but he was this close from shutting the entire site down. It got so bad. Fast forward to this week. This may be the most divisive, polarizing match in AEW history. People took to review bombing the match between Ospreay and MJF. Imagine how much of a fucking loser in life you have to be to review bomb a wrestling match. This is what he wrote. On top of my normal real-life workday, I had to react to review bombing, reactionists, dozens of emails from users complaining about the tribalism, and basically a complete disregard for the rules of the rating system because apparently the pairing of MJF and Will Ospreay in a match has encouraged almost more polarized opinions than John Cena and Roman Reigns did in their heyday. I got yelled at by both sides for being pro and anti their view, and I got yelled at by neutral observers for letting the tribalism get out of hand. From this day onwards, for WWE and AEW events and matches, the following user moratorium rules are in effect. Number 1. If a user's first valid rating is less than 12 months before a show's date, then they have to wait until 24 hours after the show before they can leave a rating. Comments are allowed. Number 2. If a user's first valid rating is less than 6 months before a show's date, then they have to wait until 48 hours after the show before they can leave a rating. And again, comments will be allowed. Number 3. If a user's first valid rating is less than a month before a show's date, then they have to wait until 72 hours after the show before they can leave a rating. Comments are allowed. This user moratorium is in addition to the existing ratings moratorium that requires a longer comment for the first couple of hours after a show. My rationale for introducing this rule is that most of the review bombing happens in the first 1 to 2 days after a show and is executed mostly by newer accounts. If you are affected by these rules without ever having engaged in tribalism, I am sorry, but I will not make exceptions. How sad is that? This is where we are now. Now, you're always going to have at least a small group of mouth-breathing mutants who ruin it for everyone else and make it so that we can't have nice things. I mean, you have that in life, not just with wrestling. One bad apple spoils the bunch. But these people who will fight to the death to defend their billionaire over the other billionaire, they'll defend one set of initials over the other. These people are seriously lacking something in their lives that I hope they can find one day. I really do.